Okay, so there's public and private space. So this is going back to the little points thing, right? There's public and private space. This is a public space, right? The Renaissance lutenist was a private space, but you are in a large public space. And a public space, you're asked to provide music for a crowd that you don't quite anticipate. You can pretty much say that on a game day you will get a certain type of crowd, but it's actually quite different, you know, on many other days. You'll get some academics, you'll get this, you get tourists, you get hotel people. And so the knowledge about public and private is an important one, because one of the things about a place like this is that a lot of people, this is a public space, but that table's private. And that table's private. And maybe two people in these two seats, they want to have a private conversation, and they want to have a private experience. So how do you open up, how do you carve out private spaces within big public areas? And how do you find a music that accommodates both the privates and the public? Because those two people are probably just as important to you as, you know, the people having the business meeting maybe on this chair or in the red room next door. So that's one consideration. How do you create private spaces within a big public thing? And so open and close too. I mean, the doors, you know, there's no bouncer, well, not usually, but you know, these are spaces that have a free flow of traffic. You know, people come in and out. You don't just actually close them off. And so there are no big barriers here. There are walls and there are seats and there's an arrangement, but for the most part, it's an open space. And that means that the space and the music is pretty much one and the same. Function. You know, all these different kinds of musics that we've heard have dealt with different functions. One is Renaissance music for church. There's jazz music for a club. What is the function here? It's not just eating. What is it else? Is it to meet? You know, is this, you know, Tinder Central? You know, is what it is actually, I can tell you. But what are the many functions of a space, and how does music somehow be able to be part of those multi functions that take place? And what do you do when people ask that, you know, their function is not being well served by the atmosphere that you've created? That's a very important consideration. Familiarity and surprise. You know, one thing about playing music in a public space is that, you know, there are pieces that people recognize, and there's always something great about familiarity. But there's also something great about going and Shazamming something and say, you know, that's a fantastic piece. What is that? And just like restaurants have gallery space where they look either local artists or maybe sometimes unknown artists or up-and-coming artists, or their work is presented, and some of it's for sale, but some of it might just be exhibition space. Maybe restaurants have a function to promote unfamiliar music. You know, if you think of the museum part of it, there's classics and masterpieces, but then there's also exhibitions. And those exhibitions are up-and-coming things. They're new works. They're sometimes challenging works. And so it's an interesting place. Without live music, you actually have a fairly large palette to be able to choose you know, different colors. So familiarity and surprise, I think, are two interesting parts of thinking about music within a space. You know, I guess I'm concerned a lot about more and more about identity. Maybe that's also because I'm a professor at BU, and these are very you know, important and now frequent subjects with my students. You know, is there an identity aspect? You know, are there places that might lend themselves to particular identity politics? Do those elements become part of this? Do restaurants have reputations that impede or push away people who feel that it's a different kind of identity? I mean, whether it's gender identity or sexual identity or political identity, racial identity, is identity part of what a restaurant is? Is this a white restaurant? Is this a diverse restaurant? Is it an inclusive restaurant? Is it a multicultural restaurant? What are the things that, is it possible to even have that conversation that we're having about almost everything, including food these days? And so, I was hearing Garrett talk about Anthony Bourdain just before this, and you follow him through his travels, whether it's to the Middle East or to Latin America, and you always encounter this cultures. You encounter cultures at every step of the way, and you learn about cultures as he moves and eats a frog or eats a rock or something like that. And all kinds of things. Rock with sauce. The other thing is a genre. Jazz or rock. I mean, there's a fluidity now that we've listened to. We're not all based on one place. We understand the fact that music has a very, very long past. And there are so many different genres and subgenres, and I think that the diversity of music is one thing that I celebrate, and certainly one that matches the diversity of your menu and the diversity of your food as it changes and as it gets revitalized with new ideas, and finally, I think rhythm. Rhythm is really important. You can talk about melody, but melody can often get lost. You can talk about familiarity with the song, the hook, of the chorus. But I think rhythm is one thing that tends to be the most important aspect when listening in a large space like this while you're having different kinds of activities.